हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। आज की वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट की पोम द लास्ट डचेस के बारे में। रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट के बारे में हम पहले एक वीडियो में डिस्कस कर चुके हैं जिसका लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में है। चलिए पोम के बारे में डिस्कस करते हैं। पोम को इन डेप्थ डिस्कस करने से पहले जान लेते हैं उसके कुछ की फीचर्स। It is a well-known dramatic monologue. It suggests that the speaker has killed his wife and will soon do the same to the next. The poet's inspiration for the poem came from the Duke and Duchess Ferrara. The Duchess died under very suspicious circumstances. She was married at 14 and dead by 17. Browning uses these suspicious circumstances as inspiration for a poem that dives deep into the mind of a powerful Duke of Ferrara who wishes to control his wife in every aspect of her life, including her feelings. Browning, of the Victorian age, wrote real life poetry that reflected upon some of the darkest aspects of Victorian life. One of those aspects, of course, is the treatment of wives by their husbands. Everyone is familiar with Henry VIII and his many wives whom he accused and executed when he tired of him. Robert Browning reveals that this mentality was widespread during this time. Wives were viewed as disposable, and their husbands would often accuse them of doing away with them when they desired to marry someone else. The life of a Victorian wife was a perilous one. The poem is a chilling poem about the value of a woman in a duke's life. Section 1, line 1 to 15. That's my last touches painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder. Now, Fra Pandolf's hand worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will they please you sit and look at her? I said. Fra Pandolf's by design for never read. Strangers like you, that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there, so not the first. Are you to turn and ask thus, Sir, 'twas not her husband presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek, perhaps. The poem opens up with the speaker asking a listener if he would please sit down and look at a portrait of his last Duchess. This makes the readers wonder why this Duchess is no longer his present Duchess. He does not reveal whether she is deceased or put away in a convent somewhere. He asks his listener to sit and look at the life sized painting of her. He reveals that this painting is behind a curtain and that no one but he is allowed to draw the curtain to view the painting or to show it to anyone. This is very suspicious behavior. You can immediately interpret that the Duke is controlling. The question that still remains unanswered is why is this his last Duchess? The Duke describes the look of on the Duchess' face and that she had a joyous look and an earnest glance. He notes that 'twas not her husband's presence, only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. This is a curious thing to say. Why would he expect that his presence alone and nothing else would bring joy to her face? He does not answer that question, but the fact that he notes this gives a little bit of insight into why he was the only one who was allowed to open the curtain. All along, he wanted to be the only one who would bring a lock of joy to his judge's face. Now that she was put away somewhere and her life size painting was on the wall, he could be the only one to ever see that look of joy on her face because he would allow no one else to look at the painting without his permission. Suddenly, our speaker seems somewhat psychotic. Section 2, lines 16 to 24. Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's press too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half flesh that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. In this section, the Duke seems to be remembering his former Duchess and all that bothered him about her. It would seem that she was too easily pleased by everyone around her. The Duke was not happy with his this. He didn't like that if someone like Fra Pandolf, we don't know much more about this character, were to tell her that her shawl covered her wrists too much, she would blush. The Duke did not like that she would blush at the flirtations of another man. He did not like that the things which he called common courtesy would call up that spot of joy which she seemed to always have on her face. The Duke accuses her of having a heart that was too soon made glad and too easily impressed. He was annoyed that she liked everything that she looked at. This man seems more and more psychotic and controlling as my last duchess goes on. It would seem that he put away his duchess because he could not control her feelings. He wanted to be the only one to bring her joy and make her blush. Section 3, lines 25 to 35. Sir, it was all one. My favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bow of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace all and each would draw from her like alike the approving speech or blush at least. She thanked the men. Good. But thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she rang my gift of a 900-year-old name with anybody's gift who would stoop to blame this sort of trifling. In these lines, the Duke continues to explain all the flaws in the Duchess' character. He says that she values her white mule, a branch of cherries and sunset, as much as she values a piece of jewelry that he had given her. He is irritated that she does not seem to see the value in what he gives to her, or that she seems to value the simple pleasures of life as much as she values his expensive gifts to her. He also seems irritated that she does not seem to understand the importance of his place in life. By marrying her, he had given her a 900-year-old name. This reveals that his family had been around for a very long time, and thus he gave her a well known and prestigious name in marrying her. She did not seem to be any more thankful for his than she was thankful to watch the sunset. This irritated the Duke so much that he was not even willing to stoop to her level to discuss it with her. He thinks it would be trifling to do so. Section 4, lines 35 to 47. Even you had your skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say just this or that in your discuss me. Here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessened so, not plainly said, her wits to yours, forsooth and made excuse, even then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whenever I passed her. But who passed without much the same smile? This crew, I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. Wilt please you rise, we will meet. The Duke continues to explain that he chooses never to stop to discuss with the Duchess what made him so disgusted with her. Yet he seems quite comfortable discussing it with this listener. Perhaps he thought himself too high and mighty to stop to talk to a woman. Even if that woman was his wife, he admitted that she smiled at him pleasantly when he passed by, but it bothered him that everyone received the same smile from her. He explained that he gave commands and then all smiles stopped together. This causes the reader to feel sorry for the Duchess, and rightly so. She was a lovely, happy, smiling person. It seems that the Duke commanded her in such a way as to make her stop smiling altogether. He robbed her of her joy with this controlling attitude toward her. After explaining what happened when he commanded her, the Duke turns his attention back to the painting on the wall and says, "There she stands as if alive." This suggests that the real Duchess is no longer alive. The Duke seems happier with the painting of her because he can control who gets to look at the joy in her face. The Duke then invites his listener to return downstairs with him. Section 5, lines 47 56. The company below them, I repeat, the your master's known munificence is an ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at staring, is my object. Nay, we will go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, though a rarity, with claws of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. This section reveals the identity of the Duke's listener. He is the servant of a count on the land, and they are trying to arrange a marriage between the Duke and the Count's daughter. The Duke says that his fair daughter is his object. He brings the man back downstairs with him, and as they walk, he points out the bronze statue that was made specially for him. The statue is of Neptune taming a seahorse. Neptune, of course, is the god of the sea. This symbolizes the Duke, and the seahorse symbolizes any duchess he would acquire. The Duke views himself as a god, and he wishes to tame his wife, to do whatever he wishes her to do, and even to feel whatever he wishes her to feel. This man is clearly demented and controlling, and the speakers in my last touches reveals Browning's idea of his fellow men. Poetic devices alliteration occurs when the poet uses the same consonant sound at the beginning of words. For example, look and looked in line 24. Kazura, seen through pauses, the poet uses in the middle of lines. For example, somehow I know not how, as if she ranked. Enjambment seen through line breaks. For example, the transition between lines 2 and 3 as well as line 5 and 6. Themes: the ego driven desire for control. The Duke is a man of great wealth, power, and status, which has given him an outsized ego that drives his desire to control everything. One aspect of his controlling personality shows up in the way he talks about the artists whose work populates his personal gallery. For instance, the Duke mentions twice that his late wife's portrait was done by Fra Pandolf. Beyond mere name dropping, he mentions that Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, subtly insisting that the famous artist labored at his command. Duke makes a similar implication later when he says that Claus of Innsbruck produced a statue of Neptune specifically for me, lines 56. In addition to his control over the artists who work at his behest, the Duke used this power to exert control over his wife. Though he initially struggled to keep her flirtatious smiles at bay. All he had to do was give commands, then all smiles stopped together. Lines 45 to 46. It's all important to note that the Duke's monologue is a performance meant to control the visiting emissaries perception of him as the heat into marriage negotiation. The objectification of women, given that Browning's poem mainly revolves around a highly prized portrait of the speaker's dead wife, it is important to discuss the theme of the objectification of women. The central problem the Duke had with his late wife was his inability to control what he perceived to be her excessively flirtatious personality. He complains to the emissary that she liked whatever she looked on and her looks went everywhere. Elsewhere, he makes an even more explicit suggestion of her promiscuity. Sir, 'twas not her husband's present only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. Unable or unwilling to convince her to behave differently, the Duke simply had her killed. However, her likeness remains preserved in Trapp and Dole's celebrated portrait, which captured the late Duchess' countenance in such a way that she looks as if she were alive. By reducing his wife into an ob- art object that he can keep in his own private gallery, it appears that the Duke has the best of both worlds. That is, he gets to enjoy the presence of her beauty without even having to worry about her lack of faithfulness. However, it goes both ways. The Duke seems convinced that his power and status entitles him to complete control of everything. Over the course of the poem, however, it becomes increasingly evident that he is equally subject to the power of others. As an example, consider the Duke's lengthy and unreliable account of his late wife. The more he talks about her smiley personality, the more upset he seems to become. His aggravation comes to a head in a particularly contorted rant, lines 34 to 43. The Duke subtly contradicts himself here. In the beginning of the passage, he complains about being unable to express his jealous feelings to his late wife. By the passage's end, however, he reframes this inability as a form of refusal. That is, he declares that he didn't say anything out of a sense of pride. Since addressing the subject with her, he would be tantamount to stooping, and I choose never to stoop. What all this unreliability reveals is that the Duke is a profoundly jealous type, and even though he had his wife killed to assuage it, his jealousy clearly hasn't diminished. Ironically, then, though the Duke believes he holds all the power, he is still in the trial of his last touches. थैंक यू। आई होप आज की वीडियो आपको अच्छी लगी। कैसी लगी हमें कमेंट करके बताएं और हमें ये कमेंट करके बताएं कि आप आने वाले वीडियोस किस टॉपिक पर देखना चाहते हैं। मिलते हैं कल एक और इन्फॉर्मेटिव वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे। और अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगी तो लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माई चैनल। थैंक यू।